This week on Vaticano, Rome celebrates a Little World Youth Day on Palm Sunday. Thousands of young people gather around Pope Francis to listen to his words and pray together. Also, the Holy See and the Sovereign Order of Malta represent the voice of the Catholic Church at the United Nations in Geneva in favor of the protection of people with Down syndrome. And stay with us as we retrace the evidence of Jesus' resurrection. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. On Saturday, April the 9th, on the eve of Palm Sunday, Pope Francis presided over a prayer vigil with young people in the Basilica of St. Mary Major. The celebration opened World Youth Day, which is being celebrated worldwide at a diocesan level this year. The Holy Father said that this encounter is both a first step towards the global meeting in Panama in 2019 and a preparation for the next assembly of the Synod of Bishops, which will focus on the vocational discernment of young people.
No, this synod is the synod for and all the youth.
I giovani sono I protagonisti.
Young people will be the protagonist.
Ma anche I giovani che si sentono agnostici.
Young people who feel agnostic too? Yes. And young people whose faith is not so strong? Yes. And those who are far from the church? Yes. Those too. And all of those young people who, I don't know if there's any, might be some, those who consider themselves atheists?
I giovani che si sentono atei? Sì.
Yes. This is the Synod of Youth, and we all want to hear you.
Noi tutti vogliamo ascoltarci.
Pope Francis recalled his words from World Youth Day in Krakow and said that it is horrible to see a young person ready to go into retirement at the age of 20, or young people who spend their lives sitting on couches. But there are also some who can't realize their aspirations because of injustices in society.
Tanti giovani devono fuggire, emigrare in altre terre.
Lots of young people must flee their lands and immigrate to others. It's hard to actually say this, but young people today are often treated as waste product. This we cannot tolerate.
The upcoming Synod and World Youth Day will give young people the possibility of speaking up and fighting against injustices. The Holy Father offered the example of young Mary, who rushed to Elizabeth in order to help her.
Many times in life, we spend a lot of time asking ourselves the question, who am I? But you end up spending a lifetime looking for who you are. Ask yourself instead, for who am I? Just like Mary, who was able to ask herself that question. For whom, for what person am I at this very moment? For my cousin. And there she went.
Per la mia cugina, e se n'è andata.
The Holy Father encouraged young people to be courageous, even if they feel weak and repeatedly fall into sin. He said that it is important to get back up and continue ahead. The Pope added that young people should make an effort to shorten the gap between the old generation and the new one, underscoring the importance of speaking with the elderly and also helping them to dream.
Grazie tante per il vostro coraggio.
I thank you very much for your courage, and to Panama. I don't know if I will be there, but there will be a Pope.
Se sarò io, ma ci sarà il Papa. Il Papa.
And the Pope in Panama will ask you the question,
Avete parlato con i vecchi?
have you taken some time to speak with the elderly? Have you taken their dreams and made them come true as a prophecy?
Formato in profezia concreta?
After the Marian Vigil celebrated the day before, the Pope started Holy Week on Sunday, April the 9th. At 10 a.m., the Holy Father was joined by more than 50,000 faithful in St. Peter's Square to celebrate Palm Sunday. It's a somewhat bittersweet celebration, full of joy and at the same time sorrow. We celebrate Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem, but also solemnly proclaim the gospel account of his death. The liturgy of Palm Sunday is made up of three key moments: the blessing of the olive and palm branches, the procession to the front of the church, and finally the celebration of Holy Mass. During his homily, the Pope invited all present to celebrate our King and at the same time not to stop thinking about the suffering he experienced in order to obtain our salvation.
This Jesus who, in fulfillment of the Scriptures, enters the holy city in this way is no misguided purveyor of illusions, no New Age prophet, no impostor. Rather, he is clearly a Messiah who comes in the guise of a servant, the servant of God and of man, and goes to his passion. He is the great patient suffering all the pain of humanity.
The Pope also reminded the faithful that the way to follow Jesus is through deeds. We must embrace our cross and constantly look to him every day.
This Jesus, he accepts the proclamations of the crowd, although he fully knows that the crucifix will be waiting for him afterwards. He does not ask us to contemplate him only in pictures and photographs, or in the videos that circulate on the internet. No, he is present in many brothers and sisters who today endure sufferings like his own. They suffer from slave labor, from family tragedies, from diseases. They suffer from wars and terrorism, from those whose interests are armed and are ready to strike. Men and women who are cheated, violated in their dignity, discarded. Jesus is in them, in each of them, and, with marred features and broken voice, he asks to be looked in the eye, to be acknowledged, to be loved.
After Mass at the Angelus, the Pope prayed with those present for the victims of terrorism and for the martyrs of the Coptic Orthodox Church of Egypt, who that very morning had lost their lives for their faith. After the solemn blessing, the Pope welcomed some young people from Poland. They were carrying the cross of World Youth Day, and they handed it over to a delegation of young people from Panama. The latter country will host the next World Youth Day in 2019. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now.
At the UN Geneva on March 20th, one day before World Down Syndrome Day, ADF International with the Jérôme Lejeune Foundation, Down Pride and the Order of Malta invited to this conference with a question as their theme: a Down syndrome-free world.
We participate at the Human Rights Council in the debates on the rights of persons with disabilities. We wish this event success and that the persons who have this condition can live a normal life amongst us all.
One objective was to alarm the authorities in charge about so-called prenatal testing and routine selection to be introduced into the health systems of several countries, which is a violation of human rights.
This is a very, very difficult battle, a long, protracted battle, and actually this is only one battlefield here. But the main battlefield is within families, with medical doctors, in health ministries, possibly even in churches.
In the USA, 61 to 93% of pregnancies with the diagnosis of Down syndrome are terminated, and in France, termination rates are 96%. In addition, prominent public figures trying to rationalize the killing of the unborn.
Aborting because you've been diagnosed by an amniocentesis of having a Down syndrome child is surely not a worse reason for aborting than aborting just because you feel like it.
We cannot discriminate them. God gives us the life, and we are not the ones to take the life from these unborn children. They, as you, as I, as all of you, they have the right to live, and it's up to us to defend the right to life.
In 1959, Dr. Jérôme Lejeune, a French pediatrician and geneticist, discovered the cause of Down syndrome.
Part of the doctors, of the MDs, those who have the diploma are not any longer practicing medicine. They are selectionists, they are abortionists, and they have taken responsibility which is beyond their wisdom.
For many years one believed that a child with trisomy did inherit this from his parents, a genetic defect. But this is not true. Jerome Lejeune discovered that in fact it is a genetic accident which can happen to anyone.
Don't be afraid of me or feel sorry for me. I'm just like you. I'm just like you but different. I have an extra chromosome. I have extra chromosome. It's not stopping me from enjoying my life. Please do not try to kill us all off.
I was told she would walk at 5 or 6. She walked at 13 months. I was told that she would never be toilet trained. Well, she was toilet trained at 2.5. I was told she would never learn to read and write. She learned to read and write at 2.5 and was reading ahead of normal children in her class.
I've been really touched. It was amazing to hear all these people speak against this new test that's coming out into public healthcare across Europe. Just to hear all these testimonies of people with Down syndrome, to hear from them about that they like their life, that they love their life, and I just find that really touching.
Advertising and Hollywood movies create stereotypes of perfection that discriminate against anyone who looks different. However, models with Down syndrome like Madeleine Stewart are leading the way against clichés and try to change people's negative Down syndrome mindset into a humanly up syndrome spirit. The world does not become better because only apparently perfect, not to mention fake, people live there, says Pope Francis, but when human solidarity, mutual acceptance and respect increase.
Don't worry and go with the flow, go with the personality of your child. Don't think that just because he's got Down syndrome, he won't be able to do this or that. They also have their own likes and dislikes, just like children who only have 46 chromosomes.
So if you happen to meet us, treat us just like everyone else. Because at the end of the day, we're just like you. Living life with Down syndrome is simply living.
Around the world, in economies at all stages of development, profound changes in the nature of work are happening. The unemployment rate in the European Union was 9.5%, or 4.8 million people as of February this year. And in the US, the present unemployment rate is 4.5%, or 1.5 million people. Especially young people asking where will the jobs of tomorrow come from and what will they look like. On April 6 and 7, the International Labour Organization, ILO, organized in Geneva this landmark event entitled The Global Dialogue, The Future of Work, with the objective to build a world of work that leaves no one behind and ensures social justice.
How can we manage all of these changes so that we keep the world moving in this direction of social justice?
For that to happen is to talk less and do more. We just need our governments and to talk to us as business, to talk to trade unions, or rather the workers, and make sure that from a tripartite point of view we are able to deliver as a team.
More than 700 participants attended and thousands joined and participated on the internet and social media.
The Holy See, and let's say the Catholic Church, Pope is very strong when he says it cannot be a moral, ethical approach if you don't think on those who are having nothing. Sharing is a necessity.
Do you realize that in a world where youth, 2 generations of young people, have no work, that this world has no future? Why? Because they have no dignity. We must say, we want a just system, a system that enables everyone to get on. We must say, we don't want this globalized economic system which does us so much harm. Men and women must be at the center, as God desires, and not money.
So I don't believe that the first thing that young people are looking for is money. Like they're looking for like recognition, and they're looking for like good quality conditions in their work.
The ILO, founded in 1919, with its 187 member states, is the UN's agency for the world of work.
Decent work is Goal 8 of the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
We should keep not only in mind price and efficiency, but also somehow social consequences. And I think this will be the positive thing that must come out. So robots, they are elevating human dignity, but on the other side, not robots, when it would take away jobs that human being would do also for his personal well-being.
I'm sure in every country one can come up with a list of doable policies that then would have to be pushed politically by some political leader, and hopefully by the trade unions and the management as well.
The conclusions of this conference and numerous other ILO initiatives will be used by a high-level global commission on the future of work to be established later this year.
The day after tomorrow, as soon as I enter university and meet my students, I will try to do my best to teach them in a little bit new manner, with a little bit new information, and trying to orient them for nearest and maybe even far future to be successful.
So we are talking about better future of humankind, of human society, and not of having a richer human society, let's say.
Thanks for watching. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most important and the most mysterious event in the history of the world. According to the Bible, God created man as an immortal creature, but man lost eternity by choosing to commit a sin. After this fatal failure, no one living on the earth could avoid the deadly consequences of the poison of sin. Many teachers and spiritual leaders fought against this ancient evil, but there was no defeating death. Until God himself came to the earth and offered a second possibility of eternal life to humanity. He became man. He died on the cross, and he was resurrected on the third day. Jesus' resurrection is the central element of Christianity. Today, more than 1 billion people believe and await Jesus' second coming. He opened the gates of heaven. But how is it possible to prove Jesus' resurrection from the dead? And are there any physical proofs that give evidence to it? To answer these questions, we caught up with Father Robert Gall, professor of ethics at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome.
We actually have an amazing amount of evidence regarding Jesus' resurrection. That is historical evidence. First of all, we have 4 distinct accounts that coincide and complement one another in the 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
So the main written sources are in the Gospels. There are also accounts in other early Christian texts, and Roman historian Flavius Josephus mentioned Jesus Christ's resurrection in his writings as well.
Because he was Jewish, but he was a Roman citizen, Flavius Joseph also mentions the resurrection of Jesus. And he was a Jew who was a Roman citizen, and he wrote the Antiquities of the Jews towards the end of the 1st century. So it's almost a contemporary account. It's quite close to the, in period, it's just a generation away from Jesus' resurrection.
The Gospels narrate that the apostles found the tomb of Jesus empty. in and of itself, it's not a direct proof of the resurrection, because the absence of Christ's body from the tomb could be explained otherwise. However, the empty tomb was the first step for the apostles towards recognizing the fact of the resurrection.
Of course, the empty tomb is crucial. If we were to find the bones of Jesus, this would be disastrous for our faith. And the resurrection is foundational for us Christians. In fact, you could call us Christians in our faith to be the faith of the resurrection, that we are a resurrection people, that this is what we believe in. And so, fundamental to the resurrection is that Jesus lives today, yesterday, today, and forever. And so the fact that we know where the tomb is, and the tomb is at the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre, and of course the tomb is empty. I've celebrated Mass there.
The next evidence that we can find in the Gospels is the appearances of the risen Jesus to the apostles and then to the disciples. Mary Magdalene and the holy women were the first to encounter the risen one, and then he also appeared to Peter and the 12.
Jesus appeared many times, and in amazing fashion, we should distinguish between an appearance, which is like a vision, which might be kind of like a dream. Of course, saints have had visions of Jesus, but that's different from the appearances of the real risen Jesus with his body. It wasn't just that he made himself appear to the senses of those who saw him, but it was really him. He burst through the doors in the cenacle, the upper room where Pentecost would occur later, and he met with, for instance, St. Thomas, Doubting Thomas. And Doubting Thomas put his finger in the open wound in his side. So it's clear that he had a body, and he had the wounds of the passion. So he really died on the cross, and he really resurrected to this new life, to this glorious life. And yet he didn't suffer pain from his wounds because he was in glory.
There's also material evidence of the resurrection of Christ that's described in the Gospels. The evangelist John says that Simon Peter saw the burial cloths when he arrived at Jesus' tomb, and the cloth that had covered his head was rolled up in a separate place. Then the other disciple also went in, the one who had arrived at the tomb first, and he saw and believed.
Then we also have physical evidence that remains. And most powerful and most probable and most scientifically studied is the Holy Shroud of Turin, which seems a product that's maybe, of the miracle of the resurrection. It seems to be almost like a photograph of the resurrection itself that includes, of course, Jesus' passion because of the marks on his body of the suffering that he underwent during his passion and then with his death.
The shroud is a large linen cloth with traces of blood, water stains, and holes. The man in the shroud bears wounds on his wrists, feet, head, back, legs, and chest. The right cheek is swollen, and his nose seems to be broken. The eyes of the tortured man are closed. No image, no books, nothing else reflects more precisely the passion and death of Jesus than this shroud from Turin.
Now, other signs that we have that are like photographs of Jesus, that these are, of course, they're not matter for our faith, but they're matter for continuous study. And there's an important shrine in central Italy, in the mountains, in the Apennines.
The tradition of Jewish burials at the time of Christ required a large number of cloths. John in his Gospel mentions the linen cloths, which is likely the Shroud of Turin, but he also mentions a burial veil, which Peter and John also found in the tomb. The existence of the Shroud of Turin seems to be incredible, but equally wonderful is that this second cloth allegedly also exists.
In fact, there's not really a scientific explanation for how this image got on this amazingly thin and precious material that is called byssus marinum, which no one even knows how, from what I can tell, no one even knows how to make this material anymore. And it was considered a very special material back in the times of Jesus. And it has been held that it's the veil of Veronica. And in fact, here in St. Peter's, for centuries, the veil of Veronica was venerated as such in a reliquary, but it was lost, and the reliquary was broken and damaged, and the image itself, the relic, disappeared.
Measurements of this holy face of Manopello precisely correspond to the measurements of the face in the Shroud of Turin, but now the face appears cleaned, healed, and the eyes of Jesus are open. Could this image perhaps reflect the first breath of the risen Christ and be the true icon of the glorified Jesus?
And there's an archaeologist, a German archaeologist by the name of Heinrich Pfeiffer, Father Heinrich Pfeiffer, and then a German journalist by the name of Paul Bade have both written that this seems to indicate at once Jesus' suffering during the Passion and his resurrection. It's difficult to study and to get to the bottom of this because, of course, it is a relic. At least many think it's a relic and venerate it as such, so they don't want to damage it. Any further testing would require destructive measures. So, of course, those who hold the shrine piously don't want anyone to destroy even a little piece of that precious cloth.
Both cloths, the Shroud of Turin and the veil from Manopello, could be considered as the material evidence of the resurrection. But there's another strong proof as well.
It's wonderful to consider that the strongest living proof of the resurrection of Jesus are Christians. First of all, the early Christians who were ready to die, and many of them did die because they believed in the resurrection. Many people converted. And today, the fact that the church is the oldest institution that has ever existed in the universe, and you have 1 billion people who believe in Jesus' resurrection, this is very strong evidence that Jesus really did resurrect from the dead.
To believe in the resurrection is very important for Christians because God promised eternal life to those who follow him. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most important and the most mysterious event in the history of the world. And traces of this mystery testify that Jesus died on a cross, and on the third day he rose again from the dead.